Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Maple Leafs fans, welcome back to Game Over Toronto. I hope you're having a wonderful Monday. I am here with Zach Payne. The Leafs just beat Tampa Bay in Toronto 5-3. It was closer than I would like it to be, but we get the 2 points. We stay on top of the Atlantic, and we get one further point away from the Florida Panthers. So, welcome to Game Over. It is a little bit of a light show tonight because the game started at 7:30, although it was on Prime. Zach, do you actually watch it on Prime out west as well?
Yeah, I kind of have to. And I will say, it doesn't help that the game for you Eastern folks, it starts later, and also the puck drop is like 20 minutes after the scheduled time. The intermissions seem to last an extra couple minutes. It just, all in all, a very long broadcast.
Yeah, normally, like, if the game is on Sportsnet, like, the game is over by, like, an hour ago. Like, we would be actually done streaming by now. But that's okay. I actually really like the Prime broadcast. How do you like it? Because it's been a little while since we had one.
Yeah, the intermission panels are so much better than poor Sportsnet. I think of most of the Leafs broadcasts that have been on Prime, they've featured Sarah Nurse at one of the intermissions, which is always fun to see because she's really good on TV, especially compared to some of the Sportsnet broadcasters, Ron McLean. So, I apologize.
Shots fired. Shots fired.
The Prime broadcast is every bit better than the normal Leafs broadcast that we do get. So it's always refreshing to see that every once in a while.
Yeah, there was somebody that posted on Blue Sky about, it was basically a reference of, like, the Prime broadcast being like, wow, you know, the Leafs are on a two-game winning streak, and they're really going to give Tampa a hard time. Look at the shots, look how well they're playing. And then Rogers on the Leafs. I took a crap this morning and it looked like a leaf in the toilet. Like, it's sort of the comparison between how the different shows talk about the Leafs, not only in the color commentary when the game's actually going on, but like you said, in the intermission. And God bless Sarah Nurse. She has more charisma than most of the NHL squidged into one body, which was fabulous. So, like I said, we are going to talk all about the game. We're going to play a game a little bit later, actually, a little big deal or no deal. We're going to talk about the injuries. We're going to talk about the new injuries. We're going to talk about the news that we got out of the injury camp today. And we're going to do all of that, but we're going to do that after we talk about Hyperdrive Hockey. Shift into Hyperdrive and get ready to have some fun with your new source for all of the biggest stories in hockey. Bring a unique style of broadcasting and commentary with a Quebecois flavor. Hyperdrive Hockey combines top-tier hockey analysis, big stories, pop culture, and a damn fun atmosphere that will drive debate and make you think and more. Join Max, Daphne, and Kevin every Tuesday and Friday for your fill on the hockey world. You can watch it on YouTube on the Game Over Network, or you can subscribe on podcast on Apple, Spotify, Amazon. Head to the website, gameovernetwork.com for more. So let's get into this game, Zach, because at the end of the first period, I mean, the shots were 11-6. Toronto was heavily outplaying Tampa for the majority of the first period, but they were only up 1-0, and then the game ends up actually ending 5-1. It really felt, the more the game went on, like the Tampa Bay Lightning were a bunch of sharks and there was blood in the water.
Well, the game ended 5-3. Small correction, not 5-1. But
5-1, yes, that's what I meant, sorry.
I gotta say, like, look, we could talk about how the Leafs maybe weren't as sharp defensively. Maybe Joseph Woll had a couple goals that he would normally save. But, boy, it is so much more entertaining to watch Leafs hockey when there are actual goals and offense to talk about. It's crazy how that happens. I think when we harken back to last week with the 3-game losing skid, part of what made that losing skid such to tease the segment later, a big deal potentially, is the fact that the way they were losing was so just concerning, and the fact that they didn't generate any offense at all. And now against New Jersey, they have a third period surge with some offense and some goals. Against Montreal, obviously they have the monster comeback and put up 7. Tonight they have a nice offensive night, even though they weren't necessarily generating the most chances. Their overall expected goals still falls a little bit below average for a normal game, but when the goals go in, I tend to care less.
Yeah, it's funny, eh? Like on the shows where sometimes they win, but it's just by a fraction. It seems like there's so much bad to talk about, But even in tonight's game, even though Tampa does come within a couple inches of actually winning the game, it really felt like, for the most part, the Leafs were in it the whole time. It didn't really feel like they just checked out or anything, which is very nice to see. Because like you said, essentially like within 14 to 8 days ago, the Leafs couldn't have put 5 goals together in 3 games. So it's nice to see them do it more than one game in a row. So obviously we can talk about the special teams a little bit, but they didn't really come into the game until the third period, which was kind of weird. Like halfway through the second, I was looking at my notes and I was like, it's not been a power play so far. Or a PK, which, realistically, Tampa Bay has the 4th best power play in the league right now, which is crazy. I was not aware of that until tonight when they put it up on the scoreboard. The Leafs PK has been pretty good, but Tampa Bay's power play, Nikita Kucherov, he almost has like the Alex Ovechkin problem where you know where he's going to be and yet he will still score on you.
Well, the difference with Kucherov is you know where he's going to be, and you will never know what he's going to do with the puck when it gets on his stick. Yeah. You don't know if he's going to shoot it himself. He's got a backdoor option. He's got a slot option. He can pass it back to the point, pass it all the way across. Every single player on the ice has to be accounted for when the puck is near Kucherov, because even at 5-on-5, you saw throughout this game, he has such an incredible ability to find these passing lanes that no one else can. He might be the best pure passer in the NHL. You can throw up a couple other guys like the Leon Draisaitl's, Nathan McKinnon's of the world, but Kucherov is absolutely in that conversation. So when he has more time and space on the power play, it's just so lethal to deal with.
Well, and then he will turn around and also punch you in the face.
And he's nasty to play against, yes.
It is not a secret that he is one of the most difficult players to play against, because he will turn your spine into a xylophone. He will punch you in the face. He will take his stick and put it right where it's not supposed to go and get away with it, much like Brad Marchand. And so that's what makes it frustrating to play against him, right? But to start the game, like, honestly, one of the most dangerous people all night, and thank God he didn't score with Anthony Cirelli, because that guy, when he starts scoring against the Leafs, can't really stop. Now, we get a couple of goals by Nick Paul. He always seems to score against the Leafs. There seems to be one of those people on most teams, doesn't there?
It's crazy how that happens. A lot of people like playing the Leafs.
It's funny how that happens. But just going through the game, like William Nylander gets a really, really nice goal in the second half of the second period with 6:15 to go. It was actually one of the nicest played Morgan Riley made all night, just with the breakup of the pass, and then William Nylander is becoming the breakaway juggernaut. He can't seem to stop scoring on these, which in years past, there's been lots of players that we've had on the Leafs that are able to gain the zone and get a breakaway, but can rarely score. Looking at your pure
Nylander
angle.
included, honestly.
And the other Nylander as well.
Well, and look, William Nylander, over the years, he has 2 breakaway moves, right? He either shoots it or he fakes the shot and goes backhand. And, it's going in more for him this year because breakaways are high percentage looks. But it's not like he has been this juggernaut on breakaways his whole career.
No, and just this year specifically, and even in this game, like Bobby McMahon got a really nice breakaway. He wasn't able to score on it this time, but even last game, it seems like the Leafs. Do you remember last year when we played against Florida, and it seemed like as soon as not Florida, the year before, when the Leafs played against Florida in the second round, it seemed like anytime Florida got the puck, it was going the other way and it was going in the net. And that's how the Leafs are kind of playing in the last few games, where even against New Jersey, they weren't playing overly well, but on the opportunities they were getting, they were really getting them, and they were just a couple inches away from bearing several in that game. So, I have been a long-standing believer of the fact that the Leafs need to do more of that. They need to be more opportunistic, because in the playoffs, as much as special teams can win you or lose you a series, the fact of the matter is there's fewer penalties called. So it's more important that you be able to actually produce and actually bury those breakaway opportunities when they come, because they happen in the playoffs. But in years past, we had players like Mikheyev or Kapanen that would gain the zone and would just fire it right on their chest, whereas now we have other people that are being able to actually bury those. Even Matthews tonight, that one Matthews goal the Matthews goal is just like, oh my God, it's just so pretty, isn't it? Like, to start the game, too.
So beautiful.
4 minutes in, like, he looks as good as he did all season last year.
Yep, he's all the way back.
Yeah. And I mean, that's not even like a high angle shot. He just right along the ice 5 hole was just, oh, it just felt so good. And I mean, OEL gets a point on that one as well. He has been heating up a little bit lately too, considering, the conversation all through December was the fact that the defense was not really contributing. It sounds like that is starting to turn the page. And part of that is that Berube actually spoke about that in like the pregame interviews today, talking about the fact that he and Morgan Riley had conversations about how he needs to play better defensively and he needs to produce more offense. Are you glad to see that conversation finally happened? Publicly, at least?
Publicly, yes. I imagine. Well, I don't know. Like, you can let me know if you agree on this, but it kind of feels like one of those things that doesn't really need to be said. I don't think Morgan Riley needed to be told that his play wasn't up to his own standard, because he has probably been his own harshest critic. We've seen that with a bunch of guys on this core, that they just tend to feed into the pressure a little bit, and sometimes it gets to some guys more than others. And I'm willing to bet Riley, like, when Berube would have pulled him aside and be like, hey, we got to talk. He's like, I know. I got to be better. So we'll see if he gets better. I'm not going to count on his defensive game getting that much better. We know who Morgan Riley is as a player. But if he could kick in some offense, it'll be a lot easier to forgive the defensive woes.
Well, yeah, and it seems like there's more commitment just from the defense in general. Like, even Simone Benoit had like that really good opportunity in the second period. Like, I don't know the last time I saw an actual Benoit shot where he actually fired it on and it was a scoring opportunity. It ended up producing a really nice rebound, but Knies gets a shot on that rebound, but Jonas Johansson actually ends up covering it up. He was actually pretty good all night for the Tampa Bay Lightning in the first two periods, really. That it really easily could have been like 3 or 4 by the end of the second period.
Yeah, well, I mean, it did end up 3 at the end of the second period, but I tweeted out or posted on one of the apps that it's kind of tongue-in-cheek that the Lightning figured out that the Leafs know how to beat Vasilevsky, and so they put the other guy in as a precaution to that, which you have to respect the commitment to the bit, but because the Leafs do have Vasilevsky's number. But look, maybe the Leafs just have Tampa's number to an extent, because every time the Leafs and Lightning play, Toronto seems to be able to score relatively easily. And I don't know what it is, because as we've documented this season, goals have not exactly been the easiest to come by. It's super weird that they have this team's number. Obviously, in 2022, Tampa did win that series, but 2023, the Leafs didn't even play that good, and everything just went in, and they even beat them. So, I don't know. Weird team to have their number.
Yeah, it is a kind of strange goalie voodoo, isn't it? I mean, hey, they're in our division, so I'm glad for that. Like, the Leafs also have this strange record against Shesterkin, too, if I'm not mistaken. Where the last couple of games they've, like...
Usually in New York, they play really good against the Rangers, and then the games in Toronto...
They suck. Yeah. But it's just, like, to your point, it's I wonder if we got Tampa in the first round, if Vasilevsky starts game 1. I mean, they would.
Yes, he would.
But if you score like 4, do you maybe see him for game 2?
I think they'd have to be the Lightning are in pretty dire. Even like the Lightning could be down 3-0 and the Leafs put up 7 every game, and even then I still don't know if they pull that trigger, because that, like, it's not like most teams where you have your tandem where, like, Vasilevsky plays 60-65 games a year. He is the guy. And I don't know if it'd be, because if you pull that trigger and you lose anyways, it's just tough. But I'm fully mentally preparing myself for another series against Tampa, although I'm kind of mentally preparing for that to be in round 2.
Wouldn't that be nice? Let's beat Montreal on the way. Well, speaking of that, let's move on to our second period. Now, before we talk about that, really quickly, make sure you hit like, make sure you hit subscribe right down here. You can follow Zach and I. We will tell you all of our socials at the end of the stream here. But if you're looking for ways to help an upstart media company employing over 30 young journalists and analysts across Canada, if you have a few bucks to spare kicking around, if you could head over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/thegameovernetwork. There you'll find multiple multiple tiers featuring different rewards and goodies for helping us grow. There's extra access, exclusive looks behind the scenes, Discord benefits, merch, discounts, opportunities to give us feedback, and to have us join special shows live where you can interact with the host as we launch more ways to improve your experience. If you're not able to spare a few dollars, we have a free tier available as well, so you never miss out on any of our content. If you really want to help us, though, if you could hit like and subscribe, it would go a long way on YouTube. And if you could rate us 5 stars on your favorite podcast app, share our work over social media of choice as well. So let's get into the second period. Now, I know who I would give the belt to, and he's my Wonderwall. But who would you give the belt to after tonight's game?
I think I'd have to give it to someone who has been quietly this randomly amazing Tampa Bay Lightning killer in his young career, Matthew Knies, who ever since he came into the league and was immediately thrust into a playoff series against them, and that continued into the next regular season. He just kept putting up points, and this year he just keeps scoring. He keeps putting up points. He cannot be stopped whenever he plays the bad blue and white. And good and eyes.
That's right. The bad guys that stole our colors and like to pretend like they came up with all of the designs. I'm kind of inclined to agree with you. As you were saying that, do you think that Matthew Knies is the player on the Leafs that Tampa goes, fuck that guy again?
I think he's like
the Josh Anderson.
Or like Nick Paul, if we were going to use
right.
a Tampa example. Josh Anderson, too, going back to Saturday. Like, he is just that guy who isn't necessarily one of the big guys who you don't, like, most teams wouldn't think about. Like, if you're a casual fan, you look at the Leafs, you're scared of Matthews, you're scared of Marner, you're scared of Nylander, probably scared of Tavares, too, if you have a brain. And not a lot of people know, like, casual fans don't really know who Matthew Knies is, especially if you're not a Toronto fan. So that, I think, would definitely be the one. The Tampa fans are starting to be like, that guy again?
Yeah. And I wonder if it's the same thing with Joseph Woll. I mean, they're both very young players. I mean, Joseph Woll is young for a goalie. He's not young by any stretch of the imagination. But both of those guys coming up in the last 2 years the way that they have, they're really the only like rookies that we've had that have been total actual game changers. Like, do you remember right before Matthew Knies joined the Leafs for that playoff run, how jazzed we were and how the rest of the league fans were like, oh my gosh, Toronto hyping up this rookie again. And then he came in and like crushed Tampa Bay.
Yeah. And it started like he was on the best third line the Leafs have had in a playoff series, where he was paired with Ryan O'Reilly and Noel Acciari. Random combination of players, but that was the best forechecking line I think the Leafs have had in the Matthews era. It was so nasty.
Yeah, it was wonderful to watch. And I can only imagine that, in the next 6 weeks, hopefully we get something else that doesn't make us wince and look with one squinted eye when the third line is on the ice. Because tonight, because we've had some injuries and some injuries have happened, some different people made it up into the lineup. Now, Fraser Minten made it into the lineup, who was fine. He had a couple of really good opportunities. I think he didn't play for the first 5 minutes of the game, but when he finally got in, he was pretty noticeable. I was actually watching the one shift that he was on the ice for, and he was playing his man coverage so much better than any other Leaf on the team. It was wonderful to see. So I mean, the other rookie that really came at the same time as Matthew Knies is Joseph Woll. And over the last week, I think week is pretty generous, there has been some saves that Joseph Woll, you could have a top 10 saves of his from the week, because between the diving save tonight, the save that he made when his helmet was completely off, no bucket, and the save that he made on Saturday with the knob of his stick is there's a laundry list. And it doesn't seem like he's having to make the saves the way Samsonov had to make saves, where it was because of his own mistake. Doesn't seem to be a lot of that happening, which is nice. There's just really good timely saves and giving your team an opportunity to win. I mean, tonight, Tampa is no joke, right? They are literally sharks in blood-infested waters around the net. And there was more than one save tonight on Nikita Kucherov, where Kucherov literally did the sky look to check and see if God was laughing at him from the ceiling. And he's young, right? And he's played more games so far this year than he's ever played, or he's won more games so far than he's ever won in any season. And I know that we're going to get Anthony Stolarz back in hopefully the next couple of weeks, but do you feel like he's heating up, or is he just, I mean, I know you and Dom talked about the other night about he's hot or he's cold, but when he makes saves like that, does it make you feel a little bit better about the future and what it's going to look like in April?
Well, that's what I was just going to ask you. Like, is the confidence level in he's already signed his extension, is it higher or lower based on what's happened this season? And I'd reckon for most people, it actually kind of hasn't changed because the highs are really high and the lows can be kind of really low. Like there, look, if you look at tonight specifically, there's a shot that was deflected in, not a lot of room there. You kind of hope he would have saved that. Is what it is. You could forgive it. The one I think was it Radish that shot it from the point that beat him. It beat him relatively clean. Happens, but that one you need to save. And then the third one, backdoor pass. Ben was late to cover Nick Paul in front, and Woll didn't have his stick. That one I'm not going to judge him too harshly on. So of the 3 goals he allowed, you got to have the second one. Can't have that. And he also probably kept 1 or 2 out that would have gone in on an average goaltender. So is what it is. Also want to shout out Chris Tanev, who also saved a goal in this one with Gensel on the doorstep. So that's nice to see.
Oh my gosh, there were so many plays tonight where more than one person in the crowd thought it went in. And more than one player on the ice thought it went in for Tampa. I mean, even that the Radish goal that you were talking about, the second one that went in, I actually wrote down here that I thought that he was screened really badly, but when I saw the second angle in the intermission, he wasn't. Matthews was actually further out than I thought he was, so he fully saw it and was just beat clean. And we were actually talking right before the show, and you actually mentioned the fact that Joseph Woll is not great at distance. In a similar way to Vasilevsky is, but he weirdly he seems to do better with traffic than without.
Yeah, I don't know. Woll's weird. He's so good. Like, he's very athletic. He's very his fundamentals are very sound. And his ability to wade through the traffic is very good. But then for some reason, there's just some of these clean looks from medium and long distance that'll just beat him. And you're like, oh, well, that can't go in. Like, it's not a case of him being out of position or, like, just playing his position wrong. He's just getting beat. And I don't know what the reasoning for that is, but that is, if you had to identify one area of his game that is a glaring red flag that needs to be improved, it would be his ability to handle clean looks from distance.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you. Honestly, like, there are so many close chances that he is able to save. And he does do a really good job of moving left and right, like, from post to post in the net. That's something that Samsonov really struggled with in the last couple of years. Jack Campbell as well. And he's been really, really, really good when it comes to moving just side to side. And I don't know how many chances a night, even just in the last couple of games, where he is making one save and then another save on the other side. No. Like in half a second later. And he's super agile, and I'm not wincing every time he does it. Right? Like, there are lots of goalies in the league that will make those saves, but then they kind of lay on the ice for a second like it took the wind out of him. And Joseph Woll instead, like, he gets hit in the face with a puck and then, like, makes another save. And doesn't lose track of the puck in front of him. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. I know Stolarz is coming back, and we're really excited to see him, and we're going to talk about that in the third period here in just a hot second. But the reality is that Joseph Woll, all things considered, he's, like you said, he's definitely earned the contract extension. I think if you were to put me back a year ago, I would say still sign him. Because he has been really good. He, like you said, he's making probably 2 or 3 saves a night that other goalies in the past haven't been able to save. And it's just, it does feel like he might be a game changer when it comes to April. Let's just see if he can not have a repeat of last year and actually make it over past 3 games. Wouldn't that be nice? The difference is, though, is that Samsonov is not the backup.
Yeah, well, and I'm just looking this up on Money Puck. Joseph Woll is currently 8th amongst goalies in goals saved above expected this season. The guys ahead of him, Connor Hellebuyck is number 1, Logan Thompson number 2, Lucas Dolstall number 3, Igor Shesterkin number 4, Mackenzie Blackwood, surprisingly, number 5, Philip Gustafson number 6, and honestly, even more surprising, John Gibson is 7th.
Oh, wow.
I guess he's having a bit of a bounce back here. And then Joseph Woll at 8th. Decord, Markstrom, and Dustin Wolf behind him there. And then Anthony Stolarz, despite only playing in 17 games, is 13th on that list as well.
Wow. Well, I mean, that's as good a time as any, I guess, to move over into our third period. We're going to ask you some questions, chat. I want you to take part as well. We're going to play a little game of big deal or no big deal. William Nylander famously quoted last week as saying it's no big deal that they lost 3 in a row. That team has now come around and messed around and found out that they won 3 in a row. So let's get over into the third period. But before we do that, if you're enjoying the show so far, you probably want more of this, right? Well, make sure you hit the like button on this video, click subscribe on our channel, and make sure you check the notification bell so you're alerted when we go live. If you're listening to this on our podcast, please give us a 5-star review or even write a positive review. That would be great. If you really like us, you can follow us on all of our social media platforms. You can find us on the Game Over Network on Blue Sky, at GameOverNetwork.com, on TikTok and Twitter, on Game Over NHL on Instagram, Threads, anywhere that you want to get a hold of us, we are there. You can also find us at the GameOverNetwork.com, where you can actually sign up for our upcoming newsletter. Really quick before we get into the third period and play our favorite game, Zach, where can everybody find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky at ZachPayne41, on YouTube at ZachPayne41 if you want some football content, and then I also have a football podcast, The Payne and Drain Show, that you can find wherever you get your podcasts.
Unfortunately, Zach's team lost this week, but
yeah,
I poured one
a
out for the
Lions
Detroit.
fan.
I poured one out for Detroit on Sunday, my guy. I'm sorry.
The two teams I cheer for a majority of my life, they both sucked. And now, in this new era of each of those respective teams, they're both playoff chokers. Love that.
And the worst part is, like, the Lions took a step back from last year, too. Didn't they?
Yeah, they had their best regular season in franchise history and immediately lost in the playoffs.
Okay, that's more like a Boston thing, though. Just saying.
It'd be like if the Leafs won the President's Trophy. The closest comparison is the Montreal series in 2021, where they finally won a division and then lost in the first round. But
that was so bad. Memories, guys, good memories. Okay, well, R.I.P. the Detroit Lions, Zach. I'll think of you when I don't watch the Super Bowl. I'm sorry. Okay, so let's get over into the third period and play big deal or no big deal. So, 3 wins in a row, Zach. Is that a big deal or is it a no big deal?
A 3-game win streak is not a big deal, but I will say the resurgence of the offense I will categorize as it's hard because there's only 2 ways I can classify this, but I'd say like a 3 out of 5 big deal.
Okay. A 60%.
It's a moderate deal.
Right. It's a deal or no deal, but no one's happy, which means it's a good deal. They have 3 losses last week. Was that a big deal?
I don't want to repeat myself because it was the lack of offense I was more concerned. Look, okay, if we bundle these 6 games together,
supposed to be a one-word answer, bro.
I'm not good at those.
Just kidding.
If you bundle these 6 games together, not a big deal. And because they're only 3-game samples, I will overall say that neither stretch was that big of a deal. It is more, I think, important to look at how they've played in 2025 as a whole, which is inconsistent, but they're winning mostly.
Yeah, that does help, right? Like we said, nothing matters when you're winning. It doesn't really matter how you're winning. Winning is the cure for everything, quite literally. Well, and we're going to play against the Blue Jackets on Wednesday and then the Senators on Saturday. What's the worst that could happen? We'll see how the next 3 games go, and then maybe we can have a version of big deal or no big deal 2.0. Anthony Stolarz is skating as of this week. Is that a big deal or no big deal?
Massive deal, because for as much as we love Joseph Woll, and believe me, I love Joseph Woll, it is also very important to know that he cannot play every night, and I don't want to subject any Leafs fans to Dennis Hildeby or Matt Murray for as long as I can. So Stolarz coming back is great. You want Stolarz and Woll to alternate every night the rest of the way, ideally, and then you can just figure out who you want to start in the playoffs. So massive deal.
I think we're past the time where we want goalies to be Martin Brodeur and play 65 games. So, yes, I am inclined with you. Unless you're Tampa, apparently. Yarncroke also skating for the first time over the weekend. Big deal or no big deal?
It's tough because we haven't seen Yarncroke in this system yet. I definitely would think I would probably say it's a bigger deal than most Leaf fans would say because a lot of Leaf fans randomly just don't like Calle Yarncroke anymore. I never want to see a scenario where, like, I love Steven Lorentz. He's a great fourth liner. I don't really want to see Steven Lorentz play in the top nine. Pontus Holmberg, man, I would really not want to see him ever in the top nine again. So getting someone who is more competent, you could put him on the third line, you could put him on the second line, you could even put him with Austin Matthews if you so dare. I think it's a much bigger deal than people will give him credit for.
I think a third line of Bobby McMahon, of Calle Yarncroke, and Max Domi would be no fun to play against. And that team with Calle Yarncroke is more defensively sound, and Calle Yarncroke is a way better defensive player than we remember. So I think he's going to do really well under Berube. And
so,
all of a sudden, that third line doesn't become awful. So watch. Oh my gosh.
Here's one for you, because obviously the trade deadline at some point is the Leafs are gonna make a move.
Yep.
If that's your third line, like, would you in this scenario want to acquire a new third line center, a top six winger, defenseman? Like, where would you go if Yarncroke is firmly entrenched on your third line?
So he comes back and he's good, and he's not like, oh, I haven't played in 8 months, which is what
let's
he will
say
be. Realistically.
Yeah, let's say that he scores at like a 15 goal pace and he's a good penalty killer and just overall a solid third liner.
I think I would still make a trade.
For a center?
Yep, and I'll tell you why. Because John Tavares is out right now, and Pontus Holmberg plays the second line center. No,
Yeah,
and even if Calle Yarncroke comes back and is better than he ever was, I still don't feel confident that he would be able to step into that role and that line would have offensive success. Right.
It'd be Domi that would have to be in the second line.
And look how much fun that is to watch.
He's certainly a lot more watchable when he has one of the big boys next to him, but
Sure.
Not in the playoffs, probably.
No, no. I mean, the fact of the matter is, I still think that I still would love to see them try Matthews, Domi, and Knies as a top line.
Amazing.
Because Knies is basically turning into Tyler Bertuzzi 2.0, but with more teeth. Okay, so Pat Chiaretti also out with an upper body injury. Is that big deal or no big deal? Upper body, that's all we know.
My gripes with the NHL's injury disclosure aside, I'm going to say no big deal because I think we should expect that Pacioretty is not going to be... He's not an everyday player, not because he's not good enough, but because his body can't hold up. You got to load manage him the rest of the season. Play him... You could play him one every 2 games, like one every 3 games. I don't care. As long as he's healthy for game 1 of the playoffs, that's all that matters.
Yeah, that's. I don't think I need to say any more than that. I think you hit the nail on the head, Zach. Okay, one more. Let's do a couple more. Big deal or no big deal? Because I'm actually really having fun with this. The Leafs have not made a trade yet. Big deal or no big deal? It looks like some signings are starting to happen. Edmonton takes Klingberg the other day. Big deal or no big deal?
So first of all, chat, this would be a great time if you guys have any big deal or no big
deal
questions.
Please put them in the box. This would be a great time
to ask them, kind of an early question segment. But I'll say no big deal because, look, I would have signed John Klingberg for... do we know what his contract was in Edmonton?
I don't think it ever got actually announced. Not the number.
I assume it was under $1 million. I would have signed him just to try because you could bury it if it doesn't work out. But... end of the day, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to say no big deal because it's not like their rivals have made any major moves on the trade market either. I do want Toronto to kind of get out ahead of this and make a trade before the trade deadline because I've always been of the mind that why would you wait if you want to make your team better? You can make your team better for an extra 3 weeks. Like a few years ago when Dubas traded for Jake Muzzin. That was not a trade deadline move. It was like it was the middle of January, I'm pretty sure, and he traded for him. And that gave the Leafs a few extra weeks with him to get him up to speed, get him into the system, and it made the team better for a few extra weeks. So why wait? But not a big deal for now.
Okay. Couple more. Chat, make sure you, like Zach said, put your questions, put your big deal or no big deal questions down in the chat. The Leafs are top of the Atlantic and second in the Eastern Conference. Big deal or no big deal?
Well, if we're talking about the prospect of finishing there, massive deal, because if you look at the prospective wildcard teams, let's just say I would prefer to play them as opposed to Florida or Tampa, because the drop off from Florida or Tampa to Columbus, Pittsburgh, sorry Ottawa, sorry Montreal, but you're in that too. Like, the odds of the Leafs winning around, and to go even further, winning around and actually deserving to, because again, that was 2023 round was a little bit of the luck coming back in their favor, but the difference in quality of those teams is massive, and it cannot be understated how big that would be. And also to get home ice advantage for at least the first 2 rounds would be pretty fun too.
Yeah, that'd be pretty great. I don't know about you, man. I don't know if there's a team I want to see less in the playoffs than the Habs, if I'm being totally honest. And I'll tell you why. I think second of all, Andrew Berkshire will be awful to deal with if they get into the playoffs again so early.
I am more scared of Kay and the Caden Gooley fan club over there.
Oh, that's true. That's going to be a loud trumpet to have to overcome. But I really think that Laine going onto that team and being able to just bury shots where they have needed a goal scorer so very badly, I think that's kind of a match made in heaven, if I'm being honest. If I'm a Habs fan, could not be going any better. And I don't know if I want to deal with that in the playoffs. I would rather deal with Boston. I would rather deal with a wounded Boston.
I would rather deal with Boston, because it would not feel right for the Leafs to go on a deep playoff run if it didn't involve Boston. I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's like the Canucks back in the day with the Blackhawks. You have to slay that dragon. Maybe having home ice for Game 7 will finally be the difference, but who knows?
We'll see. Well, luckily for us, we don't have to worry about it for another 3.5 months. Thank gosh. Okay, so let's get over into the overtime period. Let's pull the buzzer up here and let's get over. Make sure you get your questions in. Make sure if you have any comments. There were no big deal or no big deals from the chat, but that's okay. I am confident that they are going to get some questions in for us now. Luke Venables in the chat. I'm just going to read some of the comments. Willie is to breakaways as Ovi is for scoring from the circle. You know he's going to be there waiting for it, but you can't stop him. It started to feel like that a little bit, where it's like the Thanos snap, I am inevitable with William Nylander in the breakaway. And I'm glad that he's actually just shooting more and not trying to deke his way into a backhand.
Yeah, and look, he's been amazing this year. So if his success on breakaways will lead to a 50-goal season, I'm all for it.
Yeah, he's already re-signed, so score away, my friend. Score away. Great to see Game Over Toronto. Most interesting commentary about the Leafs and no posing and mean sarcasm like certain other post-game shows. Oh, thank you, Roger Knox. That's so nice of you. Roger Knox, you better have liked and subscribed. Just saying. Looks like the refs are trying to manage the game. Saw so many penalties that were not called in the first 2 periods, and boom, the third, still missing calls. But called a number that should have been called earlier in the game. Yeah, it felt a little bit like the refs were managing the game a little bit. There was definitely some penalties in the first and second period that I don't know if the Leafs oh my gosh, what's the matter with me? If the refs just didn't want to call them or if they genuinely missed them. But some of the calls, it looked like the refs were looking right at it. It was a bit weird.
I don't. It's tough because on the one hand, yes, there were calls that should have been made. On the other, it's not like it favored either team. The penalties were 0-0 through 40 minutes, so if you're going to let them play, at least they let both sides play.
Well, and if you want to narrow it down even more, the Leafs were 100% on their power plays tonight, so hey ya. Although only 50% on the power kill, which is not very on the penalty kill, so that's not very good. Well, we don't have any questions, and it's awful late here, so let's actually wrap the stream up, unless there's anything you want to talk about.
Real quick.
Yeah.
I do want to mention a chat earlier from Music for Al. We should talk about how darn close Austin Matthews was to a Michigan.
Yeah. I mean, you could see on his face that he was like, I almost got you, son of a nutcracker. Yeah. Jonas Johansson with maybe like the best save of the night, honestly. That's like the best defense I've actually seen on a Michigan goal from any actual goalie.
Well, it's because he saw it early, right? Like Matthews, I think that was the only thing wrong with it is Matthews, he shot for it early, and so the Johansson was able to react to it in time, and he was like, oh, yeah, I got to get my shoulder tucked nice and high. So great save, great way to defend it, because it's a really hard play for goalies to defend, obviously, so that was really impressive to see. But also, great show of skill from Matthews. Wish it would have went in.
Oh, that would have been so wicked. Like, Especially because he's been so good after coming back from injury. Like, that would have just been, like, not even the cherry on top. Like, the icing sugar after the cherries are all done. So yeah, let's wrap the stream up there. If you have not already, please go check out thegameovernetwork.com. You can find all of our podcasts there, all of our shop, all of our merch there. You can find information about us and all kinds of other resources. Make sure you hit like and subscribe on this stream and share it with some of your friends. Zach, where can everybody find you, my friend?
Real quick as we wrap up, I just want to mention, because we did kind of talk about trades, but Luke did mention, has your opinion on the trades the Leafs need to make change since the start of the season? I would say slightly, just because at the start of the season, would have been forward, and now I'm like, maybe a partner for Morgan Riley. Aside from that, you can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky at ZachPayne41, YouTube at ZachPayne41, and go listen to the Payne and Drain Show wherever you get your podcasts.
And you can find me on Instagram, and you can find me on Blue Sky, and you can find me on its evil old twin that's black and gray that I am going to be leaving, at Lauren in the 6. Please make sure you also follow the Game Over Network on there as well, where we always post all the shows ahead of time so you don't have to go scouring the internet for it. Leafs win, man, 5-3 to start the week off well. We will be back on Wednesday night against the Columbus Blue Jackets. Have a wonderful night, everybody.